Bitcoin's price has been floating at 20K, but is it because these governments are absolutely dumping Bitcoin? But is it all connected to Donald Trump and his company secretly scooping up Bitcoin where they want to keep the price suppressed to get more and more Bitcoin? Now, we're going to get into all of that and more today. But first, let's dive into the potential of the UK government now dumping off $7 billion worth of their seized Bitcoin. Now, the UK government was the third largest holder in all governments when it came to Bitcoin. So it is very peculiar that they are now dumping Bitcoin at a time like this. We've seen other governments in the past that we'll get into, specifically Germany and Bulgaria, on dumping Bitcoin. But why is the UK government doing this now, especially with as much bullish news as we're seeing? We're seeing the United States now pass all of these different laws, all of these different acts. We see MicroStrategy, MSTR, scooping up Bitcoin literally every single Monday. Michael Saylor tweeting it out. And on top of it, we have many other corporations now starting to come online. So it's very peculiar timing that we're seeing the UK government now looking to sell their $7 billion worth of seized Bitcoin to, quote, sell off debt, right? Because they believe it's reports as sensationalism. They've said they're working to sell up to 7 billion worth. Are they doing it? Are they not? Who knows? But they look like they're eyeing a sale of over 5 billion British pounds, nearly $7 billion worth of seized Bitcoin to help fill the deficit in the country's budget. The Home Office and the head of the country's treasury, Rachel Reeves, are working with law enforcement to sell their stockpile. So it's the developing system to securely store the crypto and plan the sell-off. And such a sale could potentially dent a recently renewed Bitcoin and crypto rally. But on that news, right, selling this confiscated Bitcoin, well, why are we seeing the price float around 20K? I showed you guys not too long ago that when we hit a new all-time high, Anthony Pompliano comes out and says, hey, 3 out of the past 5 times that we hit the all-time high, this last time that we hit a new all-time high, not counting just now, was right before the halving. 3 out of the last 4 times that it happened after the halving, well, we saw a price double within 18 days. So it happened very, very quickly in 3 out of the past 4 times that this happened. So why isn't this happening now? You got to ask yourself. We have a lot of whales. We have a lot more new money. We have MSTR buying up every single week. And yet we've been essentially floating around that 120K since we hit it not too long ago, about 8 days ago. So if the maths is correct here, well, then that means we have 10 more days to hit a new all-time high. But what we're seeing is the reports of selling billions and confiscated is potentially suppressing that price because everybody's looking a little away from that. And then on top of it, we've also got Senator Cynthia Lummis and the United States looking at, hey, the U.S. Marshals revealing that they potentially do not have that 200,000 Bitcoin that the United States government reportedly had. Now, everybody was screaming from the rooftops to audit Fort Knox not too long ago. Well, the great thing about Bitcoin is that you could simply audit the Bitcoin ledger because it's all public. So when the U.S. Marshals revealing that the government now only holds 29,000 Bitcoin, it's very interesting. She's saying, hey, we're leaving just 29,000 coins. If this is true, total strategic blunder and sets the United States back years in the Bitcoin race. And now we have the UK government looking at also selling off, which would not be something that the United States has already done if that report is true. I've been hearing mixed reports on that. So I'm looking to see if that is honestly the way that it has gone down, if the cookie has crumbled that way. But we've already seen the German government miss out on $2.3 billion of profit after they sold it at Bitcoin at 57K. Look, why didn't they just wait, right? They sold its Bitcoin stash in the summer of 2024, which became a $2.3 billion missed opportunity for Europe's largest economy because it sold it early. Look, all of these new programs and ways you can avoid selling your Bitcoin, well, why would you even sell at this point in time? It doesn't make any sense. We've also seen the Bulgarian government miss out on $25 billion of debt by selling off their Bitcoin in 2018. They literally had 213,000 coins to say that, hey, look, this is now worth more than their public debt. So all of these countries could have potentially paid off their entire nation's debt simply by just hodling Bitcoin. It doesn't make any sense why they did that at the time. Look, 2018 was a little bit different time. I'll give Bulgaria a little bit more leeway here. But Germany selling in 2024, absolutely crazy, especially when we had the rumblings of, Senator Cynthia Lummis coming along. Obviously, we had Donald Trump. It's absolutely crazy. And now we have the UK government considering all of this when we had literally Trump tweeting out, "What up about Crypto Week," right? The Genius Act. But it looks like after this Genius Act, there was a $9.6 billion worth of transfer. So a Bitcoin whale potentially selling off. But it's interesting timing with all of this, right? I've been alluding to this from the beginning, and I'll get into the whales potentially selling off in a minute. But all of this is happening just shortly after Trump builds a $2 billion Bitcoin hoard as cryptocurrency swells the president's net worth. Look at that. Such a negative tone with all of this. But Trump's media technology group has said to accumulate roughly $2 billion in Bitcoin and related assets, totaling 2/3 of its total liquid assets. Now, the TMTG, which trades on the NASDAQ as DJT, popped as high as 9% when markets open. And Trump's stake in the company, which trades on the NASDAQ, is now worth $2.3 billion. So it's something that Donald Trump went and did, all while the potential of this Genius Act was happening. So let's line up a timeline of events. I'm going to line out a timeline of events. Do with that information what you will. But we have the Genius Act, Trump tweeting out the Crypto Week, all of this happening. Then Donald J. Trump's media company is announcing a buy. But all in the background, the UK government is talking about dumping. Now, you can look at this two different ways, and I'll tell you guys which way that I'm looking at it right now. You could look at it and saying, hey, the UK government absolutely hates Donald Trump, so they have not been selling off. The United States didn't sell off. That's actually just a giant rumor. And the UK government, the only reason that they would sell off would be to potentially harm DJT's net worth. And then the other side of the coin is that maybe Donald Trump and his media company knew that the United States was selling off their Bitcoin. So they wanted to get it and run in at this current time in order to buy up Bitcoin at a lower price. And they knew that the announcement of all of this would inflate their holdings. So it didn't inflate it enough. And still we have the UK government, this added nice wrinkle in here that potentially that could be something new. But all of this here is very, very interesting, the development of all of this, right? Because we're starting to see, like I said, Michael Saylor and MSTR generating such a Bitcoin gain. Look at this, of nearly 100,000 coins worth $11.1 billion in the first 3 weeks of July. And their total count, well over 600,000 coins now. And the amount of Bitcoin treasury companies skyrocketing in flight, absolutely taking off with 157 now publicly traded companies and 25 literally announced in the last 30 days. Literally one new company a day. It's crazy. And this chunk of public companies now scooping up more and more Bitcoin is starting to eat up on this governments, because the governments are going to start to sell off. Private companies, obviously those are just the ones announced. look, all of these other things, they're going to start to get scrunched up by these public companies as long as these governments still doing dumb things. And then on top of that, we've got the amount of Bitcoin on exchanges getting scooped up and taken off at an all-time rate, right? We have 2.15 million Bitcoin left on exchanges. And we see that number going down here within the past couple weeks. Obviously, we got up to 2.16, but we saw, not too long ago, that number come on down to 2.15. So it was a little bit higher here 2 weeks ago, or no, 4 days ago. We saw a little bit get added here. But overall, this trend since May is down literally 130,000 Bitcoin since May has been taken off exchanges. And all of this is while, the Genius Act and quote crypto week was going on, right? So with crypto week that Donald Trump tweeted out, look, he's coined the term. This is not me, folks, saying all this. This is what Donnie T is saying, right? The Genius Act. There's some whales out there selling. Now, we're going to get into all of the whales selling here in a minute, but I'm going to tell you guys how you guys do not have to sell your Bitcoin, because I've been looking for a solution to not need to sell my Bitcoin ever again. And so you don't have to do that. This is why I've partnered with my friends over at Salt Lending. They do not rehypothecate. They've got plenty of other things that are very unique about them, one including the Salt Shield, which you can purchase. It's assurance, not insurance. It's assurance that you will not get liquidated. So you could pay a little bit extra just so to avoid all of that. But there's exclusive and special offers. For Green Candle listeners, they're going to give you 0.5% better rates than you're going to get anywhere else from Salt Lending. They also give you rates as low as 8.95%. So if you get their best LTV, you could get that at 8.45% for Green Candle listeners, and you could borrow up to 70% LTV. So these are some of the best rates that you guys can find in this, and I worked really hard to find that. Find that for you guys to make sure that I could find a trusted partner that is not rehypothecating and could get you guys some low rates. So you never have to sell your Bitcoin. You could just borrow against it. It's the most pristine collateral on the planet. Now I'm going to give you guys some of that pristine collateral, because you guys know every time you come to a Green Candle live stream, well, make sure you're smoking that like and hitting that subscribe button with the bell notifications, because I'm going to give you guys some free sats. And that's a great question, McLovin. I will look into that about how much that is. I believe it's just a little bit extra monthly in order to avoid liquidation to do that. So I'm going to go and look into that here in a second. But let's give you guys some free sats, because if you go to bitcoinwell.com/greencandle, they'll give you 500 wishing well points. Then on top of that, you can get 500 more, and then you have the chance to win up to 1 million sats. Either way, all you guys got to do is hit that subscribe button with the bell notification so you guys can come to every single Green Candle live stream, and boom, 457 sats straight to your dome piece. So let's talk about these whales dumping Bitcoin, because, if you guys are here at these Green Candle live streams getting those 457 sats, well, you very well could be a whale here in the near future. A lot of you guys are saying some generous things. I can't pull up maybe all of the cuss words in here, but the separation of money and state if they sell and lose their Bitcoin. Daniel saying maybe Bitcoin was just sold on purpose. It is Donald Dumps, not to mention the Democratic cowards that were in control last year. Hey, but as TF is saying, for them selling, it's good for all of you guys here listening, right? Selling Bitcoin is never a good decision. So make them do that, man. Maybe the US did lose their coins, but UK selling does mean more for us. I'm not surprised that these guys are selling their Bitcoin for any reason. other than, hey, they want to just potentially pump their bags. They're worried, folks. Why would you be worried about the most pristine collateral? This asset absolutely taking off. It makes no sense to me, but we're seeing Bitcoin whales dump their Bitcoin. 80,000 Bitcoin moved from a 14-year-old wallet. Literally, this isn't today by my man Matt Crosby, friend of the show. So billions of old moving with metrics like Coindays destroys and whale shadows flashing red minute are whales dumping their coins. It's more nuanced than the data initially suggest, but more than 80,000 worth of Bitcoin, nearly 10 billion, was transferred on chain from a wallet that remained dormant for 14 years. So, according to Crosby, this massive transfer appears to originate from a single wallet, and the recipient is likely Galaxy Digital, a known institutional OTC trading desk. So they'll be gradually offloaded and not dumped on the market, but really it's just sold to Galaxy Digital. So it's interesting that that is happening, and I think it's a big in part reason why we're seeing Bitcoin just float around this 100 and 115 to 120K mark. We're not seeing the massive amounts here, right? We're not seeing Bitcoin skyrocketing in flight and absolutely taking off. Now, this is absolutely crazy, right? With especially with all the things that we're saying, the initial metrics are saying that, they're it's correlated with the bull market tops, but I just don't even really believe that to be true here because of how much buying we're starting to see, right? I mean, you guys who are coming here know that I love to talk about, the amount of Bitcoin being taken off exchanges. Um, you know, I'm not going to play this full video for you guys, but MicroStrategy MSTR literally just came up with a new product to offer you guys more opportunity, offer investments to buy more Bitcoin, right? And you guys know the MSTR flywheel that I know and love to share. But, you got to keep your eye on the prize with all this because we have governments just absolutely, you know, being dumb for some reason, wanting to sell off their Bitcoin. And the whales selling is very interesting, especially when we had just crypto week, right? So let's dive into it, right? With Trump's genius bill, people are asking the question, what's behind their latest crypto adventure? Will it pay off? Amid the noise about Epstein, Donald Trump quietly started a revolution within the global monetary and payment system. The Genius Act was named after Trump announced in a rare moment of levity and without the faintest hint of irony, because it's all about stable coins, right? So we've seen, cryptos. I don't know about you guys, but I got too many texts about altcoins within this past week about things pumping and dumping and whatever. But either way, I mean, it was, I think, everything is good for Bitcoin in a sense, right? I think in the short term, we're starting to see, this alt season maybe come about. I don't think it's going to come. I think that there's going to be potentially mega crashes. And I think we got to stay laser focused as a hundredfold is saying. Because what we are seeing is, the Genius Act and the stable coins start to pump, all of these different cryptos start to pump, but the reality is whales are still actively muted, right? While some metrics show a spike in total BTC move, the number of whales participating has not meaningfully increased. Ooh, where did that go? That just moved it, right? And we've seen ETF net inflows exceed 34,000. MicroStrategy acquire 10,000. Short-term hodler supply rose by nearly 200,000. These figures suggest that the new and existing buyers are absorbing any excess supply, a bullish signals that counters fears of a sell-off crash. Right? So although we have the price just floating around and the potential of the UK government just selling off, I think everybody is really starting to look in inward and see these bullish signals go about, right? I don't see how this could be anything but bullish going forward. I mean, as you guys have said, my bad. I said the crapped currency word, but I do think that we're going to start to see, everybody start to scoop up. What we have seen is actually something pretty interesting, I think here. Um, you know, for those of you guys following on Twitter here, we've seen, ETFs now hold 1.2 million worth of Bitcoin, right? So I granted, I don't think that the ETFs are something that is, something to write home about. And it's not a way that I think you guys should hold Bitcoin by any means necessary. But it is suggesting that Saylor selling off all of his game, the 20% dip would likely be short lived and quickly absorbed by retail. And why do I think retail is starting to come here? Well, look at this. We're starting to see this Google search trend increase. Now, when I first initially tweeted about this not too long ago, everybody was saying to me, hey, you know what? You can't look at Google search trends because everybody's going to ChatGPT, AI, all of those things. Well. Now that we're seeing it start to pop up, everybody's saying, hey, look, retail's coming back. So what is it? Tell me, folks. I mean, honestly, I think for one, Google is still the number one search engine. YouTube, number two. They own them both, right? So despite ChatGPT, its increased rise, there's definitely something to hold weight here, right? Buy Bitcoin is still one of the biggest, search terms on Google, right? So the ETFs are increasing rapidly. But then we also have more publicly traded companies like DDC Enterprises starting to come about and really look at buying and raising money very quickly, right? So even though, this Genius Act was passed, people have to remember that politicians are going to try to debate that control, but everybody else is looking at Bitcoin for the true revolution that it is. They're looking at dead balance sheets. Their analysts are saying, the chart boys are saying, hey, this key support that we're having at 116, 117, the having high volume surge ETF momentum, the next 24 to 48 hours is going to be very, very interesting. Now, I think that we're going to start to see a breakout here unless we see the UK government absolutely dump. But I think that that's going to be short lived. We're seeing bank FOMO start to come in, a $325 billion giant PNC. Now, this isn't something to slouch at. Let's see how big PNC size. So PNC is one of the largest banks in the US, and it's sixth largest bank in the United States by assets under management. So JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citibank. And so them and Goldman Sachs are essentially neck and neck. So PNC is now saying that they want to custody your Bitcoin and keep that going as well. So with all of this being said, how could you be bearish, right? How could you be looking at this and saying, hey, you know what? This is a good time to sell my Bitcoin. It seems absolutely crazy. And I don't foresee that this is actually going to happen anytime soon. I don't see anybody really starting to dump Bitcoin because, even if they do, the retail buyers have not really come in just yet. I mean, the narrative around the ETFs is that the ETFs are mostly retail buyers, but seeing this Google search trend starts to increase, we're going to start to see this start to increase as well. Now, the other interesting thing that we are seeing as well here is the amount of global money supply since 2020. Now, if you look at this chart here, the global money supply is growing at the fastest pace since 2020, right? And during that time, right, Bitcoin dumped to 4K and then rose up to about 70K, which is about a 17.5x increase. Look, I know we're not at that bottom here, But if we see that increase, and we haven't even seen the United States cut interest rates yet. So if we see a similar increase, oh, I wasn't even showing this to you guys here. If we see this increase at a similar rate to what we are seeing or what we saw in 2020, well, that could look at about a $2.1 million Bitcoin price. And we haven't even seen the United States cut interest rates yet. So we're seeing these Google search trends start to skyrocket up, and the global money supply growth since 2020 absolutely take off. And on top of it, we're seeing the hash rate take off too, which would lead me to believe that, it could be something that is absolutely taken off. Now, I do see that Bitcoin dominance is growing up. Andre, this is why I'm saying that the price is being suppressed potentially because of this news here. I think the UK government is looking at selling their Bitcoin. And then we potentially have the United States selling off their Bitcoin, all while Donald Trump is trying to scoop up this Bitcoin for Trump media at $2 billion worth for his company. Now, you ask an important question about one of the sponsors. The interest rates start at 8.95%. You get 0.5% off your interest rates here. If you go to saltlending.com/green candle, but it depends on your LTV. That's where the interest rates depend on, is how much LTV you want to get. But either way, we're starting to see things really start to take off, right? So it's not just that we're seeing Bitcoin hash rate also start to increase as well. So the interesting aspect of this heat wave that we have over in Europe, hey, are we seeing the hash rate increase? Usually when we see the hash rate start to increase, that's when we start to see the price increase. Well, what are we seeing start to tick off? More miners starting to come online as well. So if you want a piece of this hash rate, guys, I don't recommend plugging in a miner yourself. That's going to be crazy work. You're going to be paying 12 cents a kilowatt hour, all of these craziness here. I don't really want to deal with that in my household. So this is why I've tried to get a little bit of that Bitcoin network by partnering with my friends over at Simple Mining. So you could go to simplemining.io/green candle today, and you could do that, and you could schedule a call. They will give you guys exclusive offers for the Green Candle contact, our Green Candle crowds here. You could purchase miners there. They will let you walk into their sites if they like. I recommend scheduling a call. They even give you tax benefits for all of this because Bitcoin miners can be used as depreciation. So you guys looking at Bitcoin and potentially looking at some of the sales here, or some of the paper-handed people that we're talking about, right? Paper hand pansies selling their Bitcoin. You see all these guys. Well, hey, you could get a help secure some of that network if you go to simplemining.io/green candle. You guys could go to the link in the bio as well and get started today. Just book an appointment, see if you've got something for you, because seeing the UK government working to sell off all of their Bitcoin, these paper-handed pansies, as they've said it in the crowd, go ahead and do that. And then make sure you guys are smoking that like and hitting that subscribe button, because these OTC desks, right? We actually just talked about that. The whales, it's interesting seeing these whales move their money, right? There's been concerns on, are the whales selling off? Now we're looking at these whales selling, and it's been moved to a Galaxy Digital wallet. But are they going to be selling off? Are they moving this to an OTC desk to sell off? There is limited coins on those OTC desks. So with all of that, I appreciate you guys coming out. If you guys want to check out some exclusive content of me, myself, and I know you guys see me sitting here at this with this crazy mustache. Go follow me on Instagram, keysopen_doors, because I've got an exclusive travel vlog coming for you guys where I'm going to be posting some reels, some great content. You guys can see a little bit different side of me here. And I'll be doing all that here pretty soon. So go ahead and follow me on Instagram and smoke that like Cheech and Chong. And I'll catch you guys all at the next one.